So if you didn't know, Tesla just recalled just under 400,000 vehicles due to crashes linked to FSD beta, and of course this didn't help Tesla stock at all as it came down crashing once the news came out. However, I want to break down how this is straight up bull and FUD when it comes to talking about Tesla. Now, before anyone gets triggered, please understand that human safety is a top concern and priority for me and anyone else who's just a decent human being. However, we have to really just break down the facts. So before you go ahead and comment in the comment section of this video, make sure to watch this video in its entirety. So why do I consider this news FUD for Tesla? Well, it really just comes down to the whole wording of things. See, the word recall is associated with a very negative connotation. And if you actually look beyond the headlines, which fun fact, a lot of people don't look beyond the headlines, you'll actually notice something and how it's actually a simple fix. And so fixing this problem with FSD beta is really just a software update, and a software update isn't really considered a recall. I mean, it's completely different when you just think about the whole logistics of a typical or traditional recall. I mean, if your iPhone or Android or whatever phone you have, right, has to do a software update because maybe there's some glitches, do we ever call that a recall on iPhones or Androids? No, because that wouldn't make sense. It's just a software update to correct the, errors going on. Now, this wordplay and trickery was pointed out by an analyst from ARK Invest, in which Elon Musk responded and completely agreed. Now, this whole wordplay trickery and software update, that's only half the reason why this is complete FUD. Now, the other reason, or the other half why this is FUD, is because, for crying out loud, it's called FSD beta, meaning it's not a finished product intended for the mass public. I mean, for crying out loud, if you take a look into the Tesla website, right, this is what you're gonna see. They specifically state that hands should still be engaged at the wheel, so it's not intended to just ride the car without having control. Now, there's a video that's just pure stupidity, and I want to play it for you guys so that you guys could just see what I'm talking about, and then we'll go ahead and move forward.
Tesla full self-driving will run down a child in a school crosswalk, swerve into oncoming traffic, hit a baby in a stroller, go straight past stopped school buses, ignore do not enter signs, and even drive on the wrong side of the road. Tesla's full self-driving is endangering the public with deceptive marketing and woefully inept engineering. 90% agree that this should be banned immediately. Why does NHTSA allow Tesla full self-driving?
Again, Tesla cars wouldn't be crashing into babies unless the driver was not actively engaging on the steering wheel, which that is negligence on their part, right? So Tesla shouldn't be taking the blame for the majority of these crashes. That's like a lighter company having a disclaimer saying, hey, you probably shouldn't set your whole house on fire, right? Now, let's say someone buys this lighter and they set their whole house on fire, destroys property, destroys the whole neighborhood. Who's at fault right here, right? Is it the lighter company, or is it the person who, actively just set the whole neighborhood on fire, right? I mean, you tell me, whose fault is it? Now, for the future, I'm very optimistic that, fully self-driving, once it's completely developed, is gonna be much more safer than an actual human, manually driving the vehicle. However, we're just not there yet. But think about it, AI has been proven to be such a strong resource. I mean, if we just look at, ChatGPT, which is something that has been popular, it's been trending for about like 2 months now. If you look at it, if you compare, a collective of 100 people, smart people, by the way, and have them go against ChatGPT, who's gonna have more information? Well, the AI, who could literally source the entire internet, is just way more better at sourcing information than, a collective of 100 people. And so we could see that AI has great potential, and we shouldn't just like discourage AI from actually being fully developed. Now, when I found out about this news, it was honestly very alarming, considering the fact that I was in a Tesla credit option spread trade, and I just saw, the stock kind of just falling down massively in just 5 minutes, and I thought to myself, well, this has to be, something big, right? There has to be some news. And then, so I checked it out, I read some articles, and I was like, oh, wow. But once I actually went through the full article, I didn't even close my position, which, by the way, for those of you guys that are not familiar with, option credit spreads, I'm not going to go ahead and break down the whole concept of it, but it was a bullish position for Tesla, and I kept my position open because I knew that this wasn't something that was going to tank Tesla down to like the floor, right? I knew that this was just going to wash away, so I kept my position. Obviously, as a trader and an investor, you have to, manage risk. But I already knew that this wasn't something that was just out, crazy out there that was gonna tank Tesla. Now, this catalyst news, which is FUD, along with other news, right, that actually impacted the overall market, definitely brought Tesla stock down. So I want to go ahead and point out some things that we should absolutely pay attention to, especially if you're interested in seeing what's going to happen with Tesla stock. So we're on my laptop using the Webull platform, and we're looking at Tesla stock from a 5-minute time frame. And so once the news came out, that was right around over here, and we see that Tesla fell down pretty quickly, which is why I was prompted to just search for news, and that's when I found out about the recalls. However, if you could see, Tesla continued falling down, so it was a very steep decline. And actually, if you take a look at the S&P 500 index ETF SPY, or if you even look into the QQQs, which is a Nasdaq Composite, index ETF, we see the same pattern. It fell down. And so one of the things I would mention to my private group, which is the Push and Profit private group, is that the reason why we're seeing SPY and SPX fall down was triggered because of a macroeconomic report, which was the PPI, right? And I mentioned that the rise in inflation for that report was due to a seasonal spike in outpatient care and not important. And I mentioned that what was more important are the high valuations. That's what provides the downside when bad news hits. So just going back to Tesla to show you guys what's been going on, and I mentioned this in the previous video, so if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing to the channel. But I mentioned that we've been rallying up since January 6th. And right around over here when we had this little drop over here, I mentioned that a pullback is going to be natural, especially when we just rallied up massively. And so obviously we're at these high levels, we're having bad macroeconomic news come out. Well, that's going to pull down the overall market. So Tesla fell down really because of a combination of the bad catalyst news, which was really FUD, and then also because the PPI report. Right now, also I do want to show you guys that we are actually trending upward. So what are some things that we have to pay attention to? So something else I mentioned to the Push and Profit private group is that many people have been debating whether or not we're going to enter in a recession, and I mentioned that reasonable minds can disagree about whether the economy is heading for a recession or a soft landing, especially after a recent run of strong data. So what do I mean by this recent run of strong data? Well, the unemployment, the job market, the labor market, it's still very robust. And so I pointed out that the leading index is not wavering, however. This is like the 10th straight decline, which is still consistent with a recession. So I mentioned that a recession still remains my base case, but the probability of a soft landing has risen. So this is good for Tesla and the overall market. Still, a recession can still happen, but the chances that it may be softer is increasing, so this is good. And this is primarily due to the fact, like I said, the labor market has been much stronger than expected, which has mixed implications for the outlook. Of course, one of the things that comes together with a strong labor market is if we have a lot of people working, that means they get their paychecks, and rather than having to rely on their savings to fuel spending, they could just use their paychecks. So this is going to kind of give a cushion for earnings for a lot of companies. And so an upshot of like a resilient labor market, this could really take us, to a softer landing in the overall economy. However, it is making things a little bit more difficult for the Feds. However, I also want to just kind of break down what is the leading economic index for those of you guys that don't know, because sometimes I feel like I just say things and, maybe people aren't following along, especially if you're not really looking into macroeconomics. So real quickly, just a quick, lesson, the leading index, right, is really, and it's really usually abbreviated as LEI, is just an index that's published monthly by the, conference board. Now, one of the reasons why, I pay attention to this index, right, is because it's kind of like a prediction of what the, macroeconomic climate is going to be in the future. But instead of just looking at one data point, right, because, job markets, savings, there's several different data points that you could look at, but the LEI, right, is a combination of several data points. So it puts things together. And so once you have everything together, it gives a more comprehensive signal to help predict the overall economic performance. And so what we're still seeing is, it's still trending downwards. So we have to be very cautious of what's going on with the overall market. We may see more pullback from Tesla as we get closer to an area of resistance, or as we get closer, if we just take a look into the price action and look at the volume profile, as we get closer to an area where there's more volume by price, meaning shares are going to be traded more are exchanged through hands. And so what does that do? That creates, supports and resistance levels. So we have to pay attention to what happens here going forward when it comes to Tesla and the overall market. But this video was really just to point out that the information for the recalls for Tesla was complete FUD. And in fact, you could see that once the news came out, Tesla pretty much still going up. However, the bad macroeconomic news still caused Tesla to go down. However, with that being said, make sure to hit that like button if you did enjoy this video, and also check out the links in the description of this video, because there is a link to the Push and Profit program, where it's a link where you could honestly be a part of the Push and Profit private group, where you have access to what I'm talking about in the data and market updates, what stocks I'm looking to trade, and the reason why. So definitely take advantage of that. And with that being said, guys, make sure to watch this next video right over here, and I'll see you guys on that next video. Take care, guys.